Hello everyone, welcome back to our course on the introduction to computers and the programming language using C. In today's session, we are going to discuss about a very simple topic which is nothing but local variables versus global variables. First of all, let me discuss what a variable is. We have discussed this concept of variable in the previous sessions. That is, a variable is something that changes its value during its program execution. This is the vague definition that everybody is going to give, right? But a variable is an alias name that is given to a location and that is being used in our program, right? For example, if we want to declare an integer variable, I am declaring it as int a. So this a is nothing but a variable of type integer. This is a declaration statement. What happens during the declaration statement is, as I told, that memory will be allocated like this based upon the data type that you have specified. Since integer occupies 4 bytes of memory, 4 bytes of contiguous memory will be taken by the compiler, and the entire 4 bytes of memory will be given a common name with a. So that is the reason why I am saying that a variable is an alias name to a set of memory locations. Why? What is the need for this variable? Why do we require this variable? Means we know that the memory, every 4 bytes means, let us assume it as like this, cells. The basic concept of the memory is nothing but a sequence of cells, a group of cells, where each and every cell can store one bit of data, either 0 or either 1. So it is going to store either 0 or 1. And remember that every cell in the memory will have an address. And this address will be in the hexadecimal notation. This is very important concept. Listen carefully. So every memory location will be having the address, and that address will be represented in the hexadecimal notation. To deal with this hexadecimal notation, that means to remember those hexadecimal notations or to program using these hexadecimal notations, is somewhat complex to the programmer. For this reason, what we have done is, instead of dealing with this hexadecimal, let us deal with a common names which are very easy for the programmer to remember, and which will be very easy for the programmer to program the things. For this purpose, the hexadecimal notations are completely ignored, and we are giving an alias name to all these 4 into 8, 32 bits, right? This is 32, so 4 bytes. 32 bits, all these 32 bits will be given a common name which is called as a. So this is called a variable name. That is all about the variable. Now we have seen what a variable is. A variable is nothing but an alias name that is given to the memory locations in order to make the program readable, in order to make the programmer's task of programming easy. For this purpose, we are using this variable. Now let us see the types of variables that are available in C. These are the two types of variables that are available in C. One is the local variable and the second one is the global variable. Local variables are those variables that are declared inside one function. For example, let me take a simple example, a vague example. Let me take a simple C program, some xyz.c, and that xyz.c consists of three functions, that is the main function, function 1 and function 2. Whatever variables you declare inside this main, or whatever variables you declared inside this function 1, or whatever variables you declare within this function 2, will be called as the local variables to that particular function. Will be called as the local variables to that particular function. Let us give an example. Let me declare a variable x here. Let me declare a variable y in the function 1, and let me declare a variable z inside this function 2. The x variable is declared inside main, therefore x is called as the local variable to main. Similarly, y is declared inside function 1, therefore y is called the local variable to function 1. And z is declared as local variable to function 2. What I mean by local means the variables that are declared as the local variables are accessed within that function only. So x is declared inside main, therefore x is local to main, therefore x can be accessed within this main only. If you try to access x here or here, it will not give any value, or it will return some errors. So the local variables are those variables that are declared inside the function and they are accessible within that particular function only in which they are declared. Very, very, very important point. Right. Similarly, if you consider this y, it is local to function 1, and this is the variable which can be accessed from here to here only. Not here to here, from the point where it is declared, from here to here, right? So from here to here you can access y. After you leave this function 1, the y will be dead. The y will be dead. So you cannot access this y outside of this function 1. In the similar lines, the z is declared as the local variable to function 2. So from the point where it has declared, it will take its birth here. The variable z took its birth at this point. So at that particular point till the end of this curly brace, the life exists for this variable. You can access the values of this z within this particular region only, within this scope. We'll see all this scope and lifetime in a concept called as storage classes. But at this particular point, you just remember that the local variables are those variables that are declared within a particular function, and those local variables can be accessed within that function only. When you try to access the local variables outside of the scope of that variable, you will get errors. And coming to the second category of variable, that is the global variable. Global variable is a variable that is declared outside of all the functions. It is not related to a particular function. You declare it outside of all the function, and you can access these global variables can be accessed by any function within the program. Right. So if you take the same program xyz.c, before this main we have one section called as preprocessor directory hash include stdio.h. After this, you can observe the structure of C program. The first one is preprocessor directives, and the second section is the global declaration section. So anything you want to declare globally, you declare it here. So if I declare a variable like int a, you can declare it here. Why? Because it is a global declaration section. You can declare the global variables, or you can declare the function prototypes. Anything you can do it. So if for an example, if I declare a variable called a as integer data type, and it is declared in the global declaration section of the program, this entire thing is my xyz.c. Since a is declared outside of all the functions, that is, it is outside of main, it is outside of function 1, it is outside of function 2. This a is called as the global variable, and this global variable is accessible by all the functions in the program. Program means xyz.c, function means main, f1, function 1 and function 2. So if you make use of a here, it is valid. If you make use of a here, it is valid. If you make use of a here, it is valid. Since a is a global variable, you are able, that means the programmer is free to access this variable anywhere in the program. Any function can make use of this global variable. Only 2 points you have to remember: where it is declared, where the variable is declared, and who can access it. If it is a local variable, you are going to declare it inside a function, inside a particular function, and accessibility is within that function only. While coming to the global variables, the variables are declared outside of all the functions, and coming to the accessibility, it is throughout the program, any function, right? So let me tell you. The first point you have to give is regarding declaration, and the second point you have to give is who can access it. So if it is a local variable, declaration is within the function, and who can access it? The same function can access it. But if it is a global variable, it is declared outside of all the functions, and who can access it? All the functions can access it. Simple thing. So if you remember these 2 points regarding these local and global variables, it will be very beneficial, and this is the entire discussion on the local variable and the global variable. The topic is not yet over. Let me have the slides here. So let me discuss the local variables first. Local variables. These variables are declared inside some functions. This is what we have discussed. The lifetime of a local variable is the entire execution period of the function in which it is defined. We'll tell you what is this lifetime, right? All these things we'll discuss in storage classes. And as I told that the local variables cannot be accessed by any other function. It can be accessed by the same function in which it is declared. So in general, the variables declared inside a block are accessible only in that block only. Block means from opening curly brace to closing curly brace. Let me take a simple example here, right? So hash include stdio.h. This is a preprocessor directive, we know. And coming to the main, let us forget about this. This is a global variable here. Float pi. So I am declaring pi as a variable of type float, and I am assigning it to some value 3.14159. And within this main, I am declaring a variable called rad, which is of type float, and this, since this rad has been defined or declared inside the main, this is the local variable to main. Here printf, please enter the radius, and I am reading it, and if radius greater than 0.0, you can see here float area is equal to pi into radius into radius. What is this pi? This is nothing but global variable. So are you able to access this pi, the global variable, inside the function? Yes. Therefore the global variables are accessed by any function in the program. Similarly rad, this is rad is the local variable. So it is you can make use of this rad, since it is a local to main, you can make use of this rad any number of times. And similarly, if you go to the global variable section, these variables are declared outside of all the functions. We have discussed it. And the lifetime of these global variables is the entire execution period of the program. Listen carefully. This is the entire execution period of the program, whereas if you go for the local, it is the entire execution period of the function in which it is defined. So remember that local variables means within the function, global variables means within the program. Program means, we have seen this example, right? xyz.c is a program. Main, fn1, fn2 are the functions. Local variables have their lifetime within the function only. Remember that local means function, within the function. Global means throughout the program, this one. Global is throughout the program and local is within the function. You can see here, float pi, this is a global variable, this is a local variable, and you can see that the local variables and the global variables can be accessed, the same program, right? So before wrapping up our concept of the local variables and global variables, let me give you a hint which is very important for regarding these variables. That is the priority. So if you have the local variables and the global variables with the same name, which one is having the more priority? That I will explain it with an programming example, right? You are able to see the screen, right? This online editor is visible, right? Online editor visible or not? Super, right? So let me take a simple program to explain you the concept of the priority of the global and the local variables. Which one will have the highest priority? So people will think that the global variable will be having the highest priority. This is general psychology of the human being. Why? Because global variables are those variables that are declared outside of all the functions, and those variables are accessible by all the functions in the program. You will think that global variables have the highest priority. But remember one important point, that local variables will have the highest priority over the global variables, right? Let me explain it with an example. Hash include stdio.h. In the global declaration section, let me declare a global variable int a is equal to 10, right? And let me write the main function. So the a here is this part. This a is nothing but a global variable, and what value I am assigning? I am assigning it to 10. And in the main, let me declare the same variable a, but I am assigning it to 20. So printf value of a is %d and a. So we will be thinking that this a, here you can observe here that the global variable is a and the local variable is also a. You can, the point you have to remember here is, you cannot give the same name to the variables within the same scope. You cannot give the same names to the variables within the same scope. But here you can, why it is valid means here A is specified in the global scope and this A is specified in the local scope, right. So by looking at this program, both the global variable and the local variable are given the variable name as A, and global variable is having a value of 10 and local variable is having a value of 20. But when you try to print the value of A in general, because of the psychology, what people will think is this A means the global value 10 will be taken, but it is wrong. Let us see what value is printed here. See here, the value of A is 20. Therefore, the value what A is taking is the local value. So by this you can observe that, or you can identify that the local variables are having highest priority when compared to that of global variables, right. So in this session we have seen what a variable is. A variable is nothing but an alias name that is given to a set of memory locations for ease of programming. Why this variable means? For ease of programming. And we have seen two types of variables, local variable and global variable. We have seen an example, generalized example we have seen here, XYZ program and three main functions, that is main, function 1 and function 2. And the difference between the local and global variable means where you are declaring it. If you declare a variable within the function, it is a local variable. If you declare a function outside of all the functions, if you declare a variable outside of all the functions, it is called as global variable. And if you, who can access it? The local variable can be accessed by the same function, but the global variables can be accessed by all the functions. By this in mind, we have discussed it with an example also. And finally, we have ended our discussion with comparing the priority of the local and global variables with a simple program. Always remember, very important point, that the local variables are having more priority than the global variables. Local is local, that's it. So local variables have more priority than global variables. That's all for today's session. Thank you one and all for joining the session.